your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Aloha and welcome, Dick, to Exopolitics Today.
Aloha from Hawaii. Sorry you left the state. You know, I was always meaning to get over to the other island and see you, and didn't get around to it. So this target that you gave us was really interesting. I was absorbed by it for a couple of weeks, and I look forward to talking with you about it.
Wonderful. Well, I know that you worked for quite some time as a TV anchorman in Utah. So why don't you tell us about your background as a TV broadcaster with mainstream news?
I had quite an interesting double life going on for a number of years. I'm retired from TV now. I started work in TV in 1974 as a young man at the NBC affiliate KUTV in Salt Lake City, Utah. Moved to Hawaii because I love, there I am, a young man. That's KTVX, ABC affiliate. That would have been 1983 right there. Man, I've aged. So came to Hawaii after that, was working in Hawaii, and one night driving home, heard the Art Bell show. And Art Bell, wow, what an interesting radio show to listen to driving home late at night. And one night he was talking about remote viewing, interviewing Ed Dames, Courtney Brown, Joe McMoneagle, Lynn Buchanan. And I thought, if that's true, I need to learn how to do that. And I got the opportunity to go to Farsight in 1997. And that led me to Glenn Wheaton, who was teaching privately here on the islands, a form of, that's Glenn right there, a form of remote viewing developed by U.S. Army Special Forces. He was in Army Green Beret Special Forces intelligence, and they developed a method that he passed on to us. And I need to stress that he never charged. He would not get money involved. I've trained with him for over 27 years. I did 18 years of weekly training and projects with him. So I learned more than a college degree from Glenn, and I owe him a lot. He taught me a really good form of remote viewing. So there I was being a mainstream newscaster, and at the same time delving into this other world of consciousness and aliens and human potential. So it was a very interesting journey.
Well, I imagine having worked in military intelligence, Glenn Wheaton had a lot of very interesting stories to share about some targets. And well, I mean, he taught you a method for being able to kind of like get very accurate information. And can you describe a little bit about the method that he taught you?
Yeah, first of all, I need to correct you slightly. He really didn't talk about many of the targets that they worked. There was still a non-disclosure agreement and secrecy. So he taught us the method that had been declassified, but what they did with it, I asked him questions. You know, I'd have wine and scotch with him, try to get him drunk and try to hear war stories about remote viewing. And he was really tight-lipped. He stayed away from aliens and UFOs. Very rare would he give us a target like this. As for the method, it is the primary difference between what he taught me and what other remote viewing schools teach. It's kind of a dirty little secret when you learn most of the civilian remote viewing, is they tell you never to close your eyes and that you can't actually see anything. There's never a point in most remote viewing schools where they say, yeah, you're going to see the target. They give you ideas about the target. They have you write lists of words and make diagrams and label it A, B, C, and D and get ideas about it. Glenn taught us that what you need to do is actually close your eyes, look on a screen that's up, you know, in your field of vision with your eyes closed, and train your subconscious to place visual imagery about the target. so that you actually see it as an experiential visual reality, which I did a couple of times on your space art project.
And that's, over the years, you found that to be a very accurate way of being able to gather the kind of like intel on the target, just a visual screen when you
Yes.
close your eyes, just above you.
Yes. On a good day, it can be quite accurate. It can also be you can create visuals based on metaphor. For example, I was given a blind target one time, and I saw a very clear image of a red brick building burning with black smoke coming out of it. And it looked very real to me. I mean, I had a clear as day image. There's a red brick building. It's a big building, and it's on fire. It's burning. And it turns out the target was Khobar Towers, which was a Marine barracks in Lebanon, which wasn't red brick at all. It was prefab cement, I believe, and it didn't burn. It was a bomb blast. So the subconscious can take a reality which is on a base level a building suffering extreme trauma from an explosion. I guess it did burn, and you can create it into what your frame of reference would make into a red brick building. So sometimes it's not exactly literal. Sometimes it is literal. I mean, I have probably hundreds of examples where I have drawn a target and drawn it exactly. And this is verifiable known targets where you can get ground truth. But I need to explain the way it comes to you. As I begin a session, I try to take a quick look for a second and a half, and it may just be darkness with a shadowy image that lasts for like half a second. It may be reverse image, like black is white and white is black. It may be smudged and faded. It may be nothing more than an idea. And throughout the session, as you work and get more and more target contact, the visuals get a little bit better and a little bit better. And at some point, ideally, you want to get to a point where you get into a theta consciousness where you're near sleep, and it turns into a little movie that you're seeing. So it's not full experiential reality every time right off the bat. Sometimes I get 10 or 15 seconds of experiential full color reality. Sometimes I get more ideas in faded shapes. There's a whole range of experiences that constitutes remote viewing.
Well, that kind of like in a television screen that you kind of create, or that screen, I remember coming across some literature about psychic children in China, how the Chinese military, the PLA, were identifying and using some of these kids for their programs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was described just like that these kids would see like a screen, like a television screen, that in their mind's eye, and they would see that, and it would just play like a television, like all these images wherever they put their attention. So that's fascinating.
One of the first times I actually successfully remote viewed the target, I was doing a little drill where there's a certain way you set your body in a breathing exercise, and this little movie started. And it was like I was from a surveillance camera. I saw a guy walking through a department store, and it was like, wow, that was the strangest little vision. What was that? And it turns out it was the target. Glenn and his special forces guys in the 1970s, when the military, and it was throughout the military, they were exploring the possibility of remote viewing. And what they were doing was there were different programs that were finding different psychics. Like the Fort Meade program went to Ingo Swann and asked him how he did it. The special forces guys found a guy named Dr. Richard Ireland, who was actually had a show in Waikiki where he would do psychic readings on stage. And as part of his show, he had a challenge. He said, if anybody has $100 bill and wants to challenge me, if I can give you the serial number off the $100 bill, then I get it. And Glenn was in the audience and said, okay, I'll take that challenge. I have a $100 bill right here. And Richard Ireland closed his eyes, looked on his viewing screen, and on a board wrote the letters and numbers out. And Glenn said, I'm sorry, that's not correct. And Dr. Ireland said, oh, excuse me, I believe I wrote them backwards. Can you see if I wrote them backwards, but they're correct in the opposite order? And Glenn looked at his $100 bill, and he had gotten the entire serial number correct backwards, and he gave him the $100 bill. And at that point, the Green Beret intel guys hired Dr. Ireland and took him to a secret base here on the island, underground base on the island of Oahu. This is a true story. And paid him a lot of money to back engineer what he did. And what he said was, I see it, I call it my blackboard. It's like a blackboard because it's reverse image. It's black, and what I see is in lighter color. And he said it was about where I read and up at about a 60-degree angle. And so they used that and some other techniques to reverse engineer away. You know, if for those of you listening to me, if you've never tried this, you'd be surprised. If I was to take a target ID, you know, a picture of something and give it an ID like A1, B2, C3, D4, and tell you, okay, close your eyes, looking on your blackboard, look up at about 18 inches, focus there, and try to write those letters, A1, B2, C-C3, D4. And then when I say go, close your eyes and look for the target and see what you draw. A few people would draw the shape of the target. And it, as we teach remote viewing, it's fun to watch people do that the first time. And they go, holy crap, I did that. How did I do that? So if you've never tried it, I think it's a skill that everyone possesses to some degree, because I was not really naturally psychic.
So is it something that's easy to learn? I mean, can people be trained to be able to do that, just to visualize targets?
They can be trained. It takes dedication, intelligence, curiosity, and tenacity. So I could, within a couple of weeks, you know, within 10 targets, you'll probably produce something that I will show you will relate to the target, and you'll prove it to yourself. To do it at a high level takes, the last class we trained, after about a year of training, people are now getting, actually some of them worked your target, and I need to show you that data at some point. We had some of the students work the space arc, and they got good data on it.
Well, I know that you've been training people for quite some time now, and you created crypto viewing. So maybe just explain what crypto viewing is, and what's the relationship with the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild?
Okay. Crypto viewing is not associated with Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild. I was trained at the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild, still have a good association with them, and they do training. I was doing projects with Courtney Brown, and I did a project that involved a well-known World War II figure about whom history has told the wrong story. And I don't want to get too deep into that, because I published something that got taken down off the internet. So it was a famous figure from World War II whose demise, the story may not be as told. And what I saw was this man living out his life, escaping to South America as an old man, dying of natural causes, and being buried anonymously in an anonymous grave in a small cemetery. And I published that. And someone got a hold of me when they saw that. And the person that got a hold of me is someone that there are people that keep information under control. If somebody comes out with a story that doesn't maintain the current doctrine or the current narrative, they need to check it out, because what I was told was the cemetery that I drew was exactly right, that I had seen it and that this was a true story. And I was told I needed to be careful, and that I could do some work for people, that people would subscribe to pay to see it. And I said, I don't know you. I don't remote view for money. I'd be hesitant to remote view for money. Nice talking with you. Thanks for the information. And then I developed a relationship. And what I was told was, Dick, people with your skill set should never have to worry about money. So here's what you need to know. You need to know that the financial system is in transition, and they're going to transition away from the US dollar and fiat money into cryptocurrency. If you learn about cryptocurrency and buy 3 Bitcoin, one for you, one for your wife, and one to play with, you'll have generational wealth. And so in talking to this gentleman, I eventually acquiesced and said, okay, I'll do some projects for you. And we formed Crypto Viewing. And it was based on doing remote viewing to document the transition to the new financial system. So that's how that came about. So at Crypto Viewing, we do cryptocurrency research, and we also do what we call woo-woo targets, like targets for you, targets of history, targets that are crypto targets, targets that are hidden. And we also forecast current events. So here's my plug. It's patreon.com/cryptoviewing, and I have it under my name. So we have a subscription service, and people can see our remote viewing. And the Space Arc program is out now for our founding members. And at some point in a few months, Dr. Sala, I'll make this available for the public, and we'll make it available for you so you can present the whole thing. Should we tell the story about how the project came about? Because that was interesting.
Yeah, before we get there, though, I'd just like to maybe explain why it is that you follow a double-blind protocol. Explain the importance of that.
Well, a remote viewer has to be blind to get true remote viewing data. You have to have what we call a null moment where your mind is completely blank and you have no expectation of the target. Like, if you told me you're going to remote view a target for Dr. Michael Sala, I'm already polluted. If you told me you're going to remote view the Space Arc that Dr. Sala is investigating, I'm totally trashed for the target, because I'd have too many expectations. You have to have no idea what you're viewing. For example, if I told you the target was Disneyland, you're going to say, well, I see mouse ears, Mickey Mouse, I see the Enchanted Kingdom, I see rides, I see Goofy. Remote viewing, for it to be valid, has to be done under double blind, no hints, no front loading. That's our protocol. So that's the way we do it.
And of course, that's the kind of military grade professional remote viewing, where you have 2 targeters, one targeter that gets the initial target, passes it off to a second targeter, and then off to the remote viewing team. Is that
Yeah.
essentially the way it
Yes.
works?
It would be the tasker. So the way we did it at Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild, in the 20 years that I did targets with them, I never knew anything about the target. It was always double blind, and most of the times I didn't know who it was for. So I had spoken with you some months ago. We met and we were just having lunch talking about exopolitics, and you mentioned, oh, maybe you could do some remote viewing. And I said, oh, don't talk to me. I can't talk to you anymore. If we're going to do this, I'd like to, but it would have to be like, don't tell me anything about anything you're investigating, and don't let me know that we're going to be associated with you. So I gave you to Ed in Florida, who is the guy that selects our targets. And so it was like, what was it, about a month ago, somebody sent me a target and I didn't know who it was from. And the target ID was like, I can't remember it. I've done so many. R7X2-A410. And I do my work. And I didn't know who targeteered it, and I had no idea who it was for. So that's the way we work. It wouldn't be valid any other way to say it was remote viewing. The viewer has to be totally blind.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we met in January there in Honolulu. I got to finally meet you and do some surfing again. I actually went out there on Waikiki, caught some waves.
You did?
Oh yeah,
great.
For sure.
Isn't that beautiful there?
I've been missing the surf desperately here in Tennessee.
Yeah,
I live right next to a beautiful lake, so it's very nice. I go out there paddle boarding, but here was my chance to surf a bit, so I took it.
So I felt that I was afraid that I was going to come off as rude to you, because I said, if we're going to do remote viewing for you, I can have no further contact with you. Like, it's nice having lunch with you, but don't talk to me anymore, and wait a few months until I least expect it. And so then we had this nice meeting, and I was like, I couldn't email you, couldn't text you, so we kind of like cut all ties. So it's nice to get back together with you.
Yeah, now it makes sense. I mean, given the way the process played out, now it makes total sense, because we didn't get to talk about this at all. We just, as you said, we just began to talk about, our backgrounds, how you got interested in what remote viewing, how I got interested in exopolitics. And then, after we said something about, well, we should collaborate. And you said, well, don't talk anymore about anything you've written or any projects. I want to know nothing about it. And stuff. Oh, fair enough. All right. Because I understand the blind protocol, how that works.
Yeah. Now, I'd never heard of this space arc. I mean, I was aware of some of your work, but I haven't been following it recently. So you've interviewed some guy, JP.
Correct, JP.
I haven't heard that, and I'm unfamiliar with it. So all I know about is what I saw in the remote viewing, and it seemed it felt to me like I was doing probably 3 different targets. It felt like there was a craft, like a big alien craft, and then I felt it had some there was some location with a lot of hieroglyphic type stuff that was a record of human history. And then I saw links to a previous civilization that was like just barely becoming agrarian. So I was a little confused. I was like, man, I'm bouncing all over the place on this. But it was fun. It was interesting.
Okay, well, let's begin by because the trailer was released on April 24, and the remote viewing of the Space Ark was released on April 14, on Friday. So why don't we begin just by playing the trailer, so that the viewers who haven't seen it yet can get to see exactly what it was that was released, and then I'll start asking you questions about some of the things that you saw in this remote viewing. So yeah, let's play that.
Great.
Famed UFO researcher Dr. Michael Salla has a source who claims to have witnessed and explored an ancient UFO space ark in the Atlantic Ocean as part of a secret U.S. military project. Remote viewers at CryptoView worked this as a blind target and went to this place that apparently is full of hieroglyphs and portals indicating evidence of ancient civilizations. Their final report took over 2 hours to present to Dr. Salla, and he was amazed. All the data and the final report and Dr. Salla's reaction at patreon.com/cryptoviewing.
So let's begin in terms of what you saw. I mean, there were 4 remote viewers involved in that, and we got to talk during the debriefing for that. But you had your own data that wasn't shared with anyone else prior to that debriefing that I attended. So let's begin with some of the drawings that you made, and I thought the wall.
Can I first? I need to give a shout out to the other remote viewers, my brothers in remote viewing. When we formed Crypto Viewing, originally it was Daz Smith and myself. So we have me. I'm in Honolulu. We have Daz Smith, who is in the UK, and he's been remote viewing for over 20 years. He practices a form of remote viewing known as CRV, coordinate or controlled remote viewing. And I had done projects with him for Courtney Brown. So he and I go back a number of years. When we formed Crypto Viewing, I said, I can't do it alone. I need another viewer, and we brought Daz on board. So it originally was Daz Smith in the UK and me. Daz knew Edward Reardon, who is another really talented remote viewer who is in Austin, Texas. So we brought him on board. The more remote viewers you have, the better you can, nail a target. And then along the way, we had a woman, Hitomi Akamatsu, who was in Brazil and was unfortunately died in Brazil. A horrible tragedy, a real loss for the world and for remote viewing. And then we brought in Naeem Vendreas, who's up in Canada. So there were 4 of us, me, Naeem, Daz, and Edward Reardon, that did the project for you. And how it works is they email us a target ID and say, here's your next target. And it's just a set of numbers and letters that's generated randomly. And someone, Ed, and I don't even know who tasked this. Maybe it was Ed, or was it, we have a guy named Jonathan. I'm still not sure who tasked it. They keep us so far out of the loop. So they email us this target, and then we work for 2 weeks, and they give us a deadline. They say it's due by next Thursday. We send in our work, and the day that we did the debrief with you for Crypto Viewing, we were still blind to the target. We were told there was going to be a mystery guest that was going to give us the debrief, but at the time we come on and they say, what's the most interesting thing you saw? And I showed the UFO, and then they tell us what the target is. So I just want to, I don't think we're going to highlight much of the work of the other viewers, but they did tremendous work on this, and theirs is all available at our Patreon site, and it'll be made public after our private subscribers have the first look at it. So we'll eventually show all of it.
Well, that's wonderful, and certainly I did attend that briefing, and I worked with Ed. So I guess Ed was the tasker, because he just talked to me, and I described to him what JP had seen, and the articles gave him references, and so he came up with the targets. So then I guess he passed off those coordinates to a second person. I guess you have the tasker, then a second tasker or second targeter, and then he passes it on to the 4 of you.
Were you watching the data come in real time? Like we would do a target one day and send it in, and then we'd be told continue or not. So you were seeing it.
Yeah, yeah.
You saw the evolution of the data. Because
correct. Yeah.
I sent in, I think I sent in 6 different packets. I would do a little bit of work. You know, as a remote viewer, I don't know if I've given the client what they want. So I do this work and I send it in and they go, Ed says, "You're doing a good job. That's good." And I go, "Okay." And I can't ask, did I, like, I don't know if I've answered the question. So I keep doing a little bit more and a little bit, like every day I do a little bit. I go back to that target and I get in my little, I have an EMF tent and a red light, you know, and listen to theta tones. I get in my state and I'd work for another hour and send more in. I kind of went overboard on this one. I did a lot of, it's about a 50-page session.
So you actually go into an EMF tent. So you create a kind of like a Faraday cage around yourself when you're doing the remote viewing.
Yeah. I live in a condo in Honolulu that's on the 11th floor. And right now I'm just bathed in EMF, in Wi-Fi, cell phone towers, microwave transmitters, and everybody's, you know, Wi-Fi. So what I found was I got this EMF fabric that I put over my bed, and it has a mat, and I have an EMF meter, and if I get in that, it's much quieter, and I find that's a better way to remote view it. It is like a Faraday cage. Mm-hmm. And I of course I don't want bright light for after images, so I put a red bandana over a small lamp, and I listen to tones that put me into a kind of a relaxed state, and I go to town.
Great. Well, I mean, as you said, there were 4 remote viewers, but we're going to be discussing what you saw and some of the images that you showed in the debriefing. And and I just wanted to say that I did get the initial feedback that Ed sent me from all 4 of you, and I commented about that. But that was the last time that was the one and only time I gave Ed feedback on the progress of the 4 remote viewers. But let's go to some of these images that you drew, you just have these alphanumeric targets, and you saw something on the walls of this target. So you want to describe that particular image that you drew?
Yeah, this is if you see at the top, it says Playfair A2. That's a reference to, we do 3 quick looks at the target where it's called a visual ideogram, where you look for 1.5 seconds and you draw something, and then you probe spontaneous ideograms for, like, is it simplex or complex, or is it man-made or natural? And then I'm going to a place where I'm looking for just a visual, like a shape and a sound, a taste or a smell, a texture or a temperature, very low level data. And on this target, looking at low level data, I did a probe and I very clearly saw somebody standing at a wall where there was all these carvings, hieroglyphs. So I got a fresh sheet of paper and I wrote Playfair A1, A2, I need to expand this. Yeah, I saw, now immediately what comes to mind when you see something like that is, oh, Egypt, like Egyptian type hieroglyphs. I didn't see them real clearly, but I was aware that there was a wall and there were carvings that had some meaning and there was someone looking at it.
Right. Well, that's exactly what my army source, JP, says that he witnessed when he went into this space ark in the Atlantic Ocean, or submerged under the Atlantic Ocean, that they walked inside of it and the walls were covered with the hieroglyphs. And it was lit up. He described some kind of bright algae that lit it up. Here's another drawing that you did, again showing inscriptions on the wall, or hieroglyphs on the wall, which kind of matches what JP said he saw with his team. I think he described the first mission. I think there were like 15 military personnel and archaeologists that were there exploring this space ark.
I'll make an admission that I probably shouldn't make, but when you're remote viewing, you're not omniscient. You get these quick visions. So I see this person looking at a wall, but contextually, I don't know where it is or what it is. It's like, I liken it to if you took a paper towel dispenser, you know, the tube that a paper towel comes in, and close your eyes and walk into a movie theater with a movie playing, and then you look through the tube at the screen for 2 seconds and then stop, and then you look at another scene, and then you're going to try to describe what the movie's about. So yeah, there was a moment, well, a few moments where I saw the hieroglyphic things on the wall, but I don't think I ever said it was inside the craft. I thought the craft was different. I thought the craft had landed and people witnessed the craft and interacted with it, and then went and drew the hieroglyphs as a result of that somewhere else. So I'm just trying to explain how my mind works in a remote viewing session, how you don't get the whole story, like you're trying to piece it together. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, that's more on the inscriptions in the wall, like old hieroglyphs. Smells damp, carved long ago. And I got the idea that it was a message to the future. Is there something to that? Was this some record of the past that is being kept, or you know, a message to later generations? Does that sound like what it was? Our connection has gone bad again. I can't quite hear you. You're dropping
I'm
out.
sorry. Yeah, my
Okay, now you're
my
good.
source, JP, he says that he was with some Aztec Indians who recognized the writings on the wall as very prophetic. And as they interpreted the writings, because it was actually in the Aztec language, and as they interpreted the writings, they began to sing and dance. They were so happy because for them, they were saying this is the return of Quetzalcoatl. It was predicting the return of their ancient god king, Quetzalcoatl, or whatever you call him, a great scientist that helped establish civilization in the Americas, that the writings on this space ark, according to JP, contained the prophecy of the return of Quetzalcoatl, and the Aztec Indians were celebrating when they read this. They were so happy. He said they were crying tears of joy. So you nailed it. That was exactly what was on the walls. It was these hieroglyphs, or this Aztec writing that was prophetic in nature, and the people that could understand it were in rapture over it, heralding that their god king was returning.
Well, it's my understanding that we're at the end of this current civilization, and that it's time to wrap up this show, and that a new civilization is going to be birthed. And it will be a difficult birth, but would that dovetail with what they were saying, and what this would indicate is that what I've learned is that somebody created this place and created us and put us here for a purpose. And this is not the first time we've been here. There are such civilizations have been here before on Earth, like maybe half a dozen times. and that each civilization has its run, and then it wraps up and a new one comes out. And that overlays with the transformation to a new financial system, which is going to be digital distributed ledger technology as a way to administer and keep the accounting of humanity. But that's a really deep story. I'm just seeing overlaps here. Okay.
Yeah, so the kind of like the end of the age, that is something that these space arc experiences definitely are kind of heralding, that we are ending one particular phase in our evolution as a civilization. But unlike Atlantis, that collapsed and was destroyed, and as described by Plato, our kind of like Western global civilization is just going to go through some transition to something else where we become like a galactic society. So yeah, that's one of the other images you drew. So you want to talk about that one?
This was more of my impression of what was on the wall. I felt the word ochre came to me, and my sense of it was like Egyptian hieroglyphics, but painted with really bright colors like gold or yellow. And so I had a sense of it was, they may have pictures of the craft, star stuff, people working, animals and gods and deities. I was just, you get a quick look at this and then you go to draw it and it's like, oh, what did I see? And so you kind of interpret it with your imagination fills in the blanks. So this may not be literal, but I think that's more of the wall. I'd be interested to hear what JP thought of this.
Yes, I will get him to have a look at it. But the walls, as you said, tell a story, and which is what JP said, that the walls actually record the history of humanity, or the history of peoples that were taken into these space arcs in earlier eras at the end of an age. That this has been going on, as you said, for a long, long time. It's, we're not just talking the end of Atlantis.
Oh, okay.
We're going way back.
So do you have the sketch that I drew? There was one, this was a really good visual that I saw. I saw the craft, and then I saw people all around it.
Yes.
And they were like walking in formations circular around it. And it wasn't underwater. Like it's underwater. It's not that one. Not that one. It's a black and white one. Oh, you've got the whole session. Keep going.
Oh, that's it. We didn't get all of them.
Oh, okay. Well, there was one that I saw. Well, that one right there would indicate, like, yeah, taking the people in. Large craft looked like it reminded me of Close Encounters. Like here it is, like the selected people get to come into it.
That's interesting what you saw, because that is one of the key functions of these space arcs, that during times of transition, impending cataclysms, these space arcs appear, and people are given the choice of, like, do you want to get on these space arcs and be taken to safety, and then you'll be part of the reseeding of humanity, or do you want to just stay and ride it out, and if you survive, good for you. If not, well, that's too bad. And this has been talked about going back. I mean, the arc stories go back to the Sumerians. The Bible talks
Mhm.
about Noah's Ark and Utnapishtim, the Atrahasis, and you've got other cultures talking about this. I was really intrigued. One of the most powerful stories I got was from Dolores Cannon, where she talked about these space arcs appearing, that it wouldn't just be one, it would be like literally hundreds of them, very large. We're talking like, more than several football fields in size, like a mile
Mhm.
wide, capable of taking tens of thousands of people on them, that these would appear all over the world, hundreds of them. And in that area, there would be someone who would know the pilots or the extraterrestrials. They would know them, and their job would be to like inform the others around them that, look, something really bad is going to happen. Get on this ark if you want to save yourself. Get on this ship if you want to save yourself. And so she talked about that in, I think, the Convoluted Universe, book 3. She described very vividly how that process works. And once these people get on the arks, only a few days seems to pass for them. But when the ark returns, thousands of years have passed on the Earth. And so they're part of a reseeding.
Oh, the time dilation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me insert one caveat here, that it could be like there is a possibility that literally that space arc is not down there, and that what we remote viewed is the myth of the thing, that the idea of it is so strong, the mythology of it is strong enough to create a remote viewing event. I did a project where I made up a place. I made up a dam and a lake and people sailing on it, and this whole I made it up in consciousness, and I gave it to remote viewers, and they remote viewed it. So if this is it, it could be something that doesn't really exist, but could be a myth, but it's such a strong myth in consciousness that you're able to remote view it. I'm not trying to debunk this. I'm just saying that's one possibility, and that needs to be considered. So,
Well, very interesting, because so far what we've got is, this individual, JP, who says he's been on 3 missions to this space arc with the, led, that are part of the US military, and these have been multinational missions with Chinese and Russians. So, they're describing a real physical object underneath the ocean. And there have been others that have heard about it through their contacts with extraterrestrials. And of course, your information, or the information from the remote viewing team, kind of like adds another perspective on that.
we did. I subtasked this out when I was working it, and I realized it was an interesting target. Toward the end of my work, I gave the target ID to 3 other viewers outside of crypto viewing, and they all got the similar craft. And one guy drew the same hieroglyphs that I did, exactly. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Three other people also saw the same thing.
Yeah.
So that lends more credence to it in my mind.
Well, here's something that you described seeing inside of the target, or the structure. You saw chambers. So you want to explain what it was that you were seeing here?
This was difficult to access. There was like a closed compartment, and one has human remains, like biological remains, like I want to say mummies. And then the other chamber had artifacts. And I kept getting scrolls, plaques, tablets, things that were historical in nature, like a record. So there would be a room of records and then a room of biological remains.
It's very interesting you described the biological remains, because one of the things that JP says he saw in there were these sarcophagi. These large sarcophagi, some of them were kind of like big enough to hold a giant. And you described this here, this could be like a tomb. And the way he described it was that these giants were in stasis, that they were still alive, but I guess from the remote viewing, it might appear that they're like mummies, but they're still alive in some sort of stasis condition.
I did see a really tall, well, two of us, 2 or 3 of the viewers using the HRVG method did have tall beings, like really tall beings. It's my understanding of how humans got here. Well, I actually did this as a remote viewing on another target, that the space beings that seed humanity to this planet and other planets, and there's apparently like 100,000 planets in our galaxy that have life similar to ours, is that they have a DNA database, like a DNA library. And so they can go to a planet and assess the conditions, the makeup of the atmosphere, the gravity, the life that's already evolved on that planet. And then they can tailor make, using their DNA laboratory, a proper vessel for our souls to come and inhabit. That's my understanding of how we got here, and how this little biosphere, this botanical garden, was created, and how we were put here. That's partially through sources have told me, and partially through my remote viewing. So that would dovetail with your space ark story.
Yes, that these are beings in these sarcophagi, these giants, are ostensibly the crew of that space ark, who are all dormant, but their soul or consciousness has reincarnated into a human body and is living. And this is one of the things that apparently the space arks have orbs and are looking for the crew. Well, here's another one, another interesting image that you drew. So you want to tell us about it? As
let me read this, because I've and put myself back to how I experienced this. It felt like a place that was a portal, right? And it had these hieroglyphs on it, but there was a place where spectral forms or spirits would emerge. And then I really got a clear image of a carving, like a stone face, a face in stone. And at certain times, it would animate. It would, like a weird glow would emanate from it, and it would be like, hey, there's a real spirit behind this carving. You can talk to it if you know how to do it. That was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in remote viewing, and the complexity of that realization when I was in my little tent doing that was like, what was that? How do I describe that? Because it's a knowing. Like if you walked into a place and saw a stone face on the wall, and you looked at it right, and it was like a movie, like it became animated. It started to glow and then animated and started. You could know what it was saying to you. You'd think you were friggin' crazy, but that's what I experienced.
Well, this portal that you saw in there, I mean, that's what JP described as one of the primary functions of these arcs is that they have portals inside them, space-time portals, and you literally can walk through one of these space-time portals, and you can go through to somewhere else, either to another space arc or to some other place that this portal system connects to. And I know you drew several kind of like pictures or ideograms showing portals or stargates. So here's another one. You want to tell us about that one?
First of all, on the subject of portals and stargates, after I did this target, I asked someone that I trust that is quite knowledgeable, like, are there these space arcs? Are there portals? And I was told, yes, there are. There are places on Earth where there are portals like this. What I saw here was a waveform that was three-dimensional. I had a hard time drawing it because I drew up in the left. I said, when you look at a wave on an oscilloscope, it's two-dimensional. So you see a screen and you see the amplitude of the wave. When I saw this wave, it had the amplitude was 360 degrees. It formed up as I could see it as like a sphere almost. So I was trying to draw a wave that was three-dimensional. And what did I say? This is an important force in nature, physics. Oh, I saw it in a stargate. Yeah. Okay. So I saw that the energy involved with the stargate was something with amplitude of waves in a 360-degree field. And I don't have enough physics background, or, I've heard of a stargate, but it was over my head. I just saw the energy as a round amplitude of waves. It was beautiful.
Right.
I tried to give it the turquoise and purplish color because it was a very colorful waveform.
Well, it's very interesting. You describe it as turquoise and purplish color because JP says that the space-time portals inside the arc that he saw in the Atlantic space arc was actually like a bluish, purplish color. It was a sphere, perfect sphere, and it was like a big bubble of water. And he said that this was a portal. You could go through it, and you would appear at different places. So again, this was one of those images that really I thought was really powerful corroboration.
Well, I'll tell you something just about the nuts and bolts procedure for remote viewing. Is when I'm doing it, I have at this point I have a clipboard on the bed next to me and a black pen, and so I get these visions, and there were a bunch of pages of notes. But if I draw it in color, it means that it had a more profound impact on me. I saw it in color. So after I'm out of session, I have actually a set of colored pencils, and I went and I said, man, that was blue and purple and turquoise. And so that's how I tried to draw the bubbly waveforms that I saw. So yeah, that was my representation of it. These are the Aztecs, I think.
Yeah, you want to tell us about them?
This was such a non sequitur, so incongruent within the remote viewing, because I'm looking at this big craft that comes down and people go in and out of it. And I go, okay, it's a UFO target. What the hell is this? And then I saw the Egyptian type hieroglyphs, and I'm trying to get more and more on the target. And I have to, I go in and out because I go into target I get visions, I get realizations, I know things, and I have to come back to enough consciousness, enough left brain consciousness to write my notes. So I write the notes, and then I have to go back down to that state to get back to target, and it'll take me like 15 or 20 minutes sometimes to get back down to where I'm seeing it. So it was in one of those cycles where all of a sudden I saw these two guys, and I go, they're meeting the visitors. And my realization was that the head religious guy of that like tribe or civilization comes out like, I'm in charge, I'm the guy you need to talk to. And the visitors said, no, you're not the real thing. And it was enough target contact. This guy urinated. He was like scared. He was like, he was turned away. And they selected this other guy, and they said, he has the real wisdom. This is a formidable man. This is the guy that we want to be a representative. Like they chose him and rejected the other guy, basically. And so that was just a little interlude in my remote viewing that was like, when did this happen? What does this have to do with the target? It seemed so disjointed to me.
Well,
but I saw it pretty clearly.
Well, the backstory of that was that these Aztec Indians, they got separated from the military personnel and archaeologists from the US and the Chinese teams. And so they got separated, and they were able to penetrate deeper into the Ark because they recognized the prophetic literature. And but one of them stayed behind, and he was like an interpreter. But the others were able to move forward. And they went in and they disappeared for several weeks. And that was later, after several weeks, that a follow-up mission occurred where these Aztecs were supposedly rescued. But that takes me to the next image I wanted to show, which shows the tunnel and a civilization you drew. So yeah, I wanted you to kind of like elaborate on this.
Well, I drew that exactly as I saw it, and I said it's a vein to the heart of Mother Earth, and there may be beings that live in there, but it had a real strong spiritual feel. The sense of this is an artery to Mother Earth, and it goes to another place and another time, another dimension, another it was like that goes somewhere, and it seemed important. But here again, the context of it in a remote viewing, I just, why am I seeing this? Like, wow, that's a real good visual. That seemed to be in like rock or bedrock, but very powerful energy drawing me. You can tell that I took some time to draw that just right. And I'm not much of an artist, but yeah, that goes to another place.
Yeah, well, in there you draw, you write that there may be beings that live underground. This is a portal to those beings, and that's exactly what JP described happened to the Aztecs from this space ark, that they went through some portal into an underground civilization that was controlled by these ant beings or ant people. And these ancient ant people greeted and actually hosted these Aztec Indians for that several weeks. And then when it was time for them to return, they returned, and then that's when they were supposedly rescued by the multinational mission involving the Russians, Chinese, and the Americans. But that the Ark not only connects to arcs elsewhere on Earth or off planet, but also connects to these underground civilizations all over the Earth.
Well, here's a question. Are the arcs going to appear pretty soon and take some of us up and for the next round? That's a serious question. I mean, we are coming to this civilization is teetering. We're in the I call it the sudden death overtime of Western civilization.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. This to me is like we're in a countdown. I mean, everyone assumes that the deep state and the white hats are fighting this titanic battle for liberty and freedom, and where's our planet going to go? But really, they're reacting to a timetable, a countdown, and I think this countdown involves extraterrestrials and these space arcs. That these space arcs are activating, and they're releasing hundreds, even thousands of probes. And interestingly, my source, JP, says that one of his more recent missions was to a classified library at a military facility, and he was asked to find out what the ancients had to say about these space arcs, because the military and the deep state are in a panic because they can't control the space arcs. They can't control what they're doing. They can't control what they're releasing. And apparently they're releasing a lot of these probes. And these probes are now, I think these probes perform several functions. One is to check the current state of human consciousness to determine, well, are we worthy of this experiment continuing, or should the experiment be brought to an end? And secondly, they're looking for the crew of the space arcs. The people who have incarnated in human bodies, who are the crew. And once they find the crew, then they're ready to take them up into the space arcs, because they'll be the ones that. And the third thing is that the space arcs, they're either going to play a role in kind of like evacuating millions or hundreds of millions of people, if this experiment comes to a kind of like a sad conclusion. Or they're going to release the secrets of the ancients, help humanity transition into a galactic culture, not so much because we get kind of like a lot of these extraterrestrials showing up and giving us advanced tech. It's like the arcs kind of reveal that these are the ancient technologies that prior Earth civilizations had, and this is being released to you. This is your heritage. It's like, you get an inheritance. And this is our inheritance as a civilization, that we get, the wisdom of the Atlanteans, of the Hyperboreans, of whoever came before them, that all of that ancient wisdom has been preserved. And these space arcs play a role in preserving that and in releasing that to us, if we're worthy as a civilization. And I think we've kind of reached that point where we are going to continue, because even though there's always that danger that we might implode in some kind of like crazy acts of kind of global war or whatever, but I think everything is pointing to us kind of like evolving in a kind of muddled way, but we're evolving into a galactic society.
Well, my understanding of how this works is that technology is released, the technology exists, and it's parceled out to humanity. And we're getting to a point where the technology changes the administration of Earth, and that every civilization has its own timetable and its own expiration date. And some of this may relate to cosmic events, like events taking place in the solar system, or the position of the solar system within the galaxy, and cycles of Earth that are known to those outside of time, like not us. But there are natural cycles where things are going to happen, where there's going to be a reduction in humanity, and then the newer version of humanity will emerge with greater technology, greater understanding, and a lot of this technology and interaction with ETs will be revealed and allowed. So that's kind of my take on it from what I've learned.
Well, some of these are later images that you drew of these space arcs. There's one in particular that got my attention. The one that showed, something blue in the background, and your initial impression. Yeah, go to the previous image, Jazz. Yeah, that one there. Oops, you passed it. Not that one. The other one. There we go. No. The prior one. Yep. One more.
The real colorful one.
The real color. That's it. Stay there. So you drew that. So tell us, you have some blue there. So what was your initial impression of that?
I didn't know. It just felt I never realized I was underwater, to tell you the truth. I never I would assume, well, how deep is this thing supposed to be? Like, is it down in the blackness of the deep ocean, or is it like 250 feet? I couldn't tell you from my remote viewing when the target was revealed and said, this is a space arc that's beneath the Atlantic. Now I look at my sketch and it makes sense, because my subconscious was giving me the correct drawing. Like, okay, that's on the bottom of the ocean. You can see the blue water around it. But I never had that realization, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like I say, you're not omniscient when you're remote viewing. You just get a few pieces of the puzzle, and sometimes you're not able to assemble it. What did I say here? Honestly, Dr. Sala, that reminded me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I saw the light and the contrast, the parts that I drew in yellow. I couldn't get on paper how bright this was. It was just like the Steven Spielberg, when he did Close Encounters, had that real bright backlight. It was similar to that.
Well, to answer your question, I don't believe the depth is all that great, because above it there is a kind of donut-shaped naval craft with an elevator that goes down. So we're probably talking several hundred feet, couple of hundred feet, something like that goes down to it. It's the Bermuda Triangle area, which I don't believe is very, very deep around there. But yeah, I thought this was remarkable that you had this spacecraft at the bottom of the ocean, because that's exactly what JP described this as that it was a space arc that has that kind of like a ovoid shape, and there it is. I mean, you drew it, and it wasn't just you. Some of the others in the remote viewing, they had they described similar things to what we've discussed. So this was multiple remote viewers independently corroborating this device or craft at in a kind of location, in that location that was given to them.
So experientially for me, I'll explain what it's like. I don't know anything about this target. It's just a set of target letters and numbers. I don't know who I'm working for. And I don't know if this is a historical target. It might be a future target, like what's the death of the dollar? What's, when are we going to be using cryptos? Or it might be, what happened to Napoleon at a certain date, or it could be anything. And so I don't know. And I go into my state, and that's one of the clearest things I saw. It's like, damn, I saw a oval craft surrounded by blue, rusty. And I go, am I really I'm going to draw this. And I go, man, I hope I don't make a fool of myself here. But that's what I saw. So I'm trained to just put it in, but it's like, who's this target for? This is not a typical crypto viewing target. But yeah, right. I saw that.
And the fact that you had all these lights, I mean, that corroborates again, what my insider JP is saying, that these arcs are activating, that they are beginning to power up, and they're getting ready to launch. They're getting ready to rise. And the deep state, the white hats in the military can't stop this. This is out of their power because we're at the end of a cycle. And it was always, and this I think is why you're having now. I mean, you think about this, that you have the head of the new all domain anomaly resolution office, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, writing with this former head of Harvard University's astronomy department, Professor Avi Loeb. They're writing. They proposed that a lot of these UFOs that are being sighted are coming from alien motherships.
Yeah,
that's exactly what JP is saying is happening right now. That the ARCs are releasing probes, thousands of probes.
When we published this on our site, one of our subscribers watched the video and said, I think they should activate it and take the remote viewers down to tour it. That would be cool. Give me a tour. Sign me up. Definitely. I mean, I've already seen it, but I'd like to see it in reality.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see that wall, because I saw that pretty clearly. Those were my, if you ask me, like, describe this target in one paragraph. There's a big craft sitting somewhere surrounded by blue, and there's something to do. There's a wall full of hieroglyphs that tells an old story. This has interaction with ancient people and ancient civilizations. So, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I think.
I recommend that people go to watch the full report. It's I think just over 2 hours. And where can people go to watch it?
Yeah, Patreon.com. So Patreon.com/cryptoviewing. I'm not sure at what level. I'll have to. I think we'll probably try to put this out at the lower level. There's a founder level that costs more money. I don't think they'll put it at the introductory level. I think they'll probably put it at the medium level. But Dr. Sala, this was such an interesting target, and we're honored to work with you, that we'll put this out. We're not going to keep it just for ourselves. We need to give it to our the purpose of Patreon.com/cryptoviewing is to allow the remote viewers a safe place to do targets like this reliably, and to give them a living. So Edward Reardon and Daz Smith was going to give up remote viewing because he couldn't make a living at it, and crypto viewing enables him to do that. So we'll give that to our subscribers, and I'll come back on with you, and we'll do more when we can put it out for public for everybody and let you publish it too, because we want to show it to the world. So we will in good time, pretty soon.
Yeah, thanks
for the target.
Yeah, you're welcome, and I'm just so pleased with the results that corroborating what JP is saying about the space arcs, and I really recommend people that are watching this to head over there to the Patreon site for crypto viewing and subscribe, because as Dick said, it's a great way to support the remote viewers, because they're putting a lot of time into this. And I know Dick doesn't do this for the money, but as he said, that some of the others, they have family, or they have a life that they need to support. And by subscribing to Patreon crypto viewing, you can support them. So I'd highly recommend you do that. And I just wanted to...
The structure there also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, the structure there also allows us to do work for people like you under a blind protocol. So that's important. There are any number of people would love us to work remote viewing targets for them, and some of them we don't trust. Like, we won't work a target for someone we don't know something about and don't trust. We trusted you, and it was a valid source, but it had to go through ad. So it needs that structure in place to keep it viable for the viewers. So that's another reason we have that structure.
So any final words you want to share with my audience about your work, upcoming projects?
I'm about to do it's not remote viewing. I'm going to give a little lecture at a whiteboard and draw things and talk about what people need to know about the transition. And the transition is what we're talking about here today is if this thing is activating, if the financial system really is in its final legs, if our civilization, as we can see, is being dismantled, all the pillars of our civilization, education, finance, medicine, politics, science, people are losing faith in all of that. By design, it needs to all go into an ash heap so this new civilization can rise up out of that. And I suspect that maybe we're telling the same story here, you and I, with little different methods of getting the data and a little different interpretation. Don't you think that's the case?
Yes, I think we're using very different sources, but our conclusions are very, very similar. And definitely thank you for your work and for kind of like giving this type of information on these very difficult to corroborate sources. I mean, in my case, I'm trying to corroborate a US Army insider that's being taken on these highly classified missions to space arcs and underground civilizations. So how do you corroborate that? Well, you have to use exotic sources to kind of like corroborate that, and remote viewing is an independent way of doing that. And I'm very glad that you and other remote viewers are doing this kind of work and coming up with independent data that we can say, okay, this actually checks out.
In your experience, and you have far more experience in this field than me, than I do, are people are being allowed to tell their story now? Is this being allowed to come out? People's non-disclosure agreements are being ripped up or allowed to expire. Is this a controlled release that's happening, in your opinion?
Yes, I think there is a release that's happening. I mean, I think the white hats are wanting the information to come out. They're kind of green lighting people like JP to come out and talk about this, or former military servicemen to talk about it, that they're being green lighted. And I think the way the deep state is reacting to that is to like flood the field with a lot of false information or information that is misleading or fake. So yeah, you really have to be discerning. It's like you have to discern the signal from the noise, and that's very hard. And the way I do that is to find multiple sources that corroborate any one narrative. That if you just rely on one source, then you run a big risk of getting it wrong or following the wrong agenda. But if you have if you cross-reference with independent sources, as is happening here with crypto viewing and the information JP has, I think you're on a much more solid foundation for like finding the truth of what's happening.
Well, I will not look at any of your material and probably not talk. Well, we'll do a couple other segments as this comes out, but maybe we'll do some more work for you in the future. It will be done double blind when we least expect it. I would say 6 months to a year at least, but time goes by fast. Like they wouldn't dare give us another one right away. I don't think.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I want to thank you, Dick, for coming on Exopolitics today and sharing your experiences on this incredible Atlantic space arc remote viewing. And again, people just head over to patreon.com/crypto viewing to subscribe and to watch the full report that goes for 2 hours. And I just wanted to announce that next week, on April 22nd, there'll be my new webinar series, 2 hours of Q&A, where I'll be able to talk about and answer your questions on space arcs, JP missions, and other breaking news. So information, you can just go to exopolitics.org to get that. So thank you. And